One. Love Talk Radio.
Ta-da. Well, here we are. It's the first Monday of the new year, which is known as 2021. Good morning, Brian Lunt. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Hallelujah. Yeah, you know what? I am. It's interesting because it's always funny. There's all this hoopla, Happy New Year. And it's like people are saying, this year was sickening. 2020 was sickening. I want to get rid of it, throw it out. It's done. It's over. Forget everything. And I'm thinking, okay, so when y'all open up your eyes tomorrow morning, does it all look different? Do you look different when you look in the mirror? Do you wake up and feel different? You look out at your home and everything looks different, feels different, or did you just step into a new day?
hmm
Because envision that we had that kind of enthusiasm for every day, minus the forget part. I don't like any of that forgetting zone, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. So let's tell our audience where they are. You've landed here on Blog Talk Radio at K Factor, where K, of course, stands for kindness, and the factors are all the things that lead you into it. And you've been led into this. So you got some groovy kindness coming at you here today that Brian Lunt and I will deliver. And I'm your host, Dr. Deb Carlin. This show is always sponsored by Partners in Excellence because we like to come together in this community and reach for excellence, the best. Like, you got to be darn tootin' groovy to get in here. And what is this? This is now the influencers on the platform of Partners in Excellence Media. So I decided in December of 2020, I was going to close out the year becoming a media mogul. And I invited some of my favorite people in here with me. So we have the mogul and then the mogulese.
That's good. That's a new one.
Yeah, it is a new one. So while we're in here, on Mondays, Brian and I talk about the St. Louis Business Club, right?
That's right.
And on Thursdays, we talk about Brian Lunt and his courageous efforts to ride a lion. We bring you all kinds of stories. So today, as we're talking about the business club, Brian, describe what it is that your vision is for 2021. What is the absolute ultimate that you want to see and feel and think in terms of this club that you've put together that, is pretty darn toot and groovy?
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a lot of options in the marketplace when it comes to building community. I think St. Louis has a decent amount of networking operations. There's places to get education and coaching. I find positive things in each one of them. The St. Louis Business Club is kind of my version of taking everything that's positive out there and hopefully putting it all into one organization. And so I think for me personally, I love community building. I love facilitating relationships and bringing people together. And I saw a little bit of an absence in the marketplace when it just came to kindness in the way that people make relationship. And so I wanted to offer a platform that was more accessible, that the commonality between people was that they were kind and they were good folks, and they were looking to come into something that really is the true sense of community, that all are welcome, all are held to a standard, all are held accountable to do, good things and have business as a part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the flavor of what I've put out there. I still enjoy all of the other organizations that are in St. Louis, but I have my version that's just a little bit different.
Which is why you created it.
And that's why I created it. Yeah.
So what's different though, as you leave 2020 behind you
Mm-hmm.
and you walk into 2021? I mean, like I love this last 2 weeks of the year because it affords me, I afford myself reflective time to, especially this past year, not go out and party it up and do a lot of things that I love doing, but to be at home, to be in my office, to be in my home, and just really going through a process of introspection about, okay, for the media platform, what is it that I want to accomplish across the year? And then I break it down into quarters. What is it that I want to do with publications and speaking? And I outline all that. And what do I want to do with my body this year? What do I want to do with my mind and my heart this year? Um, what do I want to do with my relationships? And so I've mapped that out. So and I know that you're a thinker. And so as you contemplate, do you have an idea of the activity level that you want to see at the business club, live and virtual, and how many members you want to pull in there, and what the quality of those members are?
I do. I think, and I think everybody puts out their ideal version of what they want to materialize and what you're targeting when you're building an organization or a company. The way that I designed this club was as an evolution from what I did previous. I used to run strategy sessions or masterminds with myself and my partner, and we were the ones that were giving all of the expertise. I feel like I'm not stupid, but I'm also not an expert in every arena. So I wanted to surround myself with people that knew what they were talking about in one of the 12 areas that we've kind of used as our nucleus. And so I went out into the marketplace and I found 12 people that I trust, that I think have more to offer than I do in their skill set. And I wanted to build the club around them as what I believe is the ultimate mastermind, so that people can come and be a part of our club and have access to that ultimate mastermind of experts and really ask any question that they need in life and business. And so that's really what formulates the nucleus of the club. And I get to be the one that facilitates it, which is what I enjoy doing the most. Now, beyond that, my goal is to create additional masterminds within each one of those arenas. And so, like I said, we have 12 masters. In an ideal setting, each one of those masters would create their own mastermind, their own expertise offering, and we could attract other experts within those spaces to provide kind of the mastery level of education and advice and consultation. And then our members get to benefit from that. So it's a good mixture of providers and consumers. And, we're not talking about an enormous organization. I often think of 12 as a biblical number, as an ancient number. And so that's where I kind of fell on the 12 masters. And ideally we'd have about 12 people in each one of their divisions. And so a membership club of about 144, 150 people feels really good for me for the location that I've absorbed. I think that can accommodate all of those people. And the goal really is to come to a place and practice life and business in a very safe space, surrounded by people that care about you, but will hold your feet to the fire, so that when you go out into the world, real life and real business isn't as difficult because you've practiced it very hard.
So do you want those 144 people to come in and they're sort of matched to the lead master of their area, and they go to their mastermind group once a month, and they come into the Wednesday maybe group of just the masters, or that group on Wednesday is just the core masters, so it's like 12 people in there. Maybe every now and again somebody comes in as an invitee,
Mhm.
and then they figure out from there, okay, here's who I'd like to study with, and so they go into their mastermind group. Do I have that right?
Yeah, what ends up happening for me when I'm building an organization or a mastermind or a group or a business, I look at this progression of interested people gathering together to discuss a mutual topic. That can evolve or graduate into a mastermind, which to me is a group of roughly a dozen people that enjoy discussing that topic or being a part of that topic on a regular basis. Once that has been established, you look at this agency style, where these folks have come together and decided that we're good at cross promoting one another. We can bundle our services together. There's a benefit of us all working in an agency relationship. And then that could ultimately materialize in an organization or a business. And so that's the progression that I see and what I've kind of infused in how we do things. And ultimately, I'm trying to design a corporate structure without being a corporation. I want to have small businesses and freelancers unite by merit as opposed to, being hired or being told what to do. And it's a very difficult recipe because it takes a lot of proactive understanding on what you want out of your life and out of your business. The difficulty I've had is my allergy to telling people what to do, because I don't like to be told what to do, but also it's necessary to have leadership and have somebody steering the ship. And so that's been the most difficult thing to manage just on a personal basis, but for the most part I think it's still on the right trajectory to get there.
So here's something to think about in the midst of our dynamic um, and figuring out, how does this really succeed? So with the Missouri Venture Forum and with the St. Louis Business Club, they're both membership-based organizations.
Mhm.
And so I don't get to tell anybody what to do, but I get to invite people to do things
Mhm.
and be suggestive and to try to be in a good enough leader that I don't have to ever say I'm the leader, but people want to follow me because I have something that they think, well, she's on to something. What is she doing? I want to follow it just for no other reason. I'm curious. And then I pitch ideas out there to see, well, how is that? And it's really interesting because the accountability then just sort of happens, people get excited about it. And in terms of that cross-referencing of business and opportunities, who do we want to do business with? People we know, like, and trust. If I don't
Yep.
know you, there's nothing. If I don't like you, forget it. If I don't trust you, I'm running in the other direction. That might be a good way to start jogging this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really, it's interesting because in the leadership positions, we really have to figure out there's no, it's so funny to me doing business consulting for a long time when people say, I don't understand what's wrong with the people in this organization. Why? Because I am the president, I am the CEO, and they are not doing what I want. I'm the leader. No, you've got a title, but you're only a leader if people want to follow you. And
Yeah.
if you don't have any followers, then you have to think about, oh my gosh, what might I tweak, And so I think really, especially when we're egalitarian and we don't want competition, but we want collaboration,
Mhm.
sometimes people walk in and they think, they like size you up and go, huh, well, you're not the boss of me. I don't have to do anything. Well, but don't you want to? Aren't you compelled to? And sometimes people are of durable character. And so they will step in to do, and as a matter of fact, do so much. And those are the delightful people that we love, right? And then we want to clone them times 52.
Yep.
And then there's other people that we look at and we think, I don't understand. I've given you this marvelous opportunity, and you're not even playing kick the can. So in your case, you're out and about and you're talking to people about what the St. Louis Business Club is. We're talking about it in here, and we really need to educate people about what it is that they can come into. Like right now, I think people are, depending on where you're living, definitely there's a lot of differences, but the mindset in the country, globally, but certainly in the United States, is unfortunately lockdown. Don't go out, wear a mask, don't breathe, don't get close to anybody, no shaking hands, bump those elbows, don't
Yeah.
hug. And you're a risk taker when you break all those rules, which I'm proud to say I do. And I wonder if in terms of the space there, it feels like you really want to fill it up and have the warmth of human beings in there, and people want to be there and they're nervous or tired or scared or waiting.
Yeah, we're in this just odd era.
Yeah.
And it's a little unsettling because it's not something that we've ever managed before. You know, I often say that I feel like I'm very good at managing risk because that's the world I've lived in for my entire career. And this is just a risk that is very difficult to manage because we don't know what we're working with. There's so much misinformation. You don't know who to trust. You know, you've got people that you've known, liked, and trusted for a long time, and they have differing opinions than you do. So it's unsettling. And for me, I'm building organizations and interactions that are in person, which is my preference.
Mhm.
But I've also had to evolve into this in person virtual hybrid. And you navigate just the philosophy of things to start with. And then when you add 12 masters and dozens more members and other relationships and strategic partners, before you know it, the complexity of all of those relationships becomes more complex than you want it to be. And so we're just in a really odd time. And for me, I've worked on my patience because you have to, and I work on my durability because you have to.
Right.
And you know, I I'm hopeful. I think what this new year somewhat represented was a new beginning for many people. People were saying, okay, once we get a vaccine, once we have an election, once we have the new year flip over, once the holidays are over, whatever it is. And I don't necessarily believe in arbitrary deadlines. Um, but I'm ready to go. I was ready to go a year ago, and unfortunately, these market forces, this fear out there, this lack of taking risk, which is foreign to me,
Yeah.
is making things frustrating. So, and that's just the reality of business. That's the reality of our lives right now. And so you manage it as best you can and hopefully continue to evolve.
Here's one of the things that runs through my mind as I'm listening to what you're saying is that risk management is great, and you have to have something to calculate.
Hmm.
The calculations keep changing. The news changes, the boundaries change,
Yep.
the numbers change, and they change not just over time, but they change from person to person, entity to entity. And then you know, as a researcher, I want to look behind what they're saying and say, okay, well, where'd you come up with that?
Yep.
And then you add the comedians into the whole thing who, you know, put their flavor in it. And then I start getting confused. Like when Stephen Colbert was on, if he still is, I don't know, because I don't watch that much TV like that anymore. But I used to get confused because he would have impersonators who would imitate, you know, the president and the officials, and I would think that that kind of looks like President Clinton. Well, it turns out that it's Will Ferrell, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and you hear the messages, and I'm thinking, well, that's interesting news. And I'm thinking, wait a second, this is a comedy channel, so you get a little thrown off. But right now, it feels like we cannot ignite this year. Why? We have the Georgia elections are going to take place, and
Mhm.
that's got, you know, like this big heavy anvil hanging over it of boom or boom. No matter who, no matter which way it goes, there's going to be a boom, and then there's going to be fallout from that. And then what happens between then and for the next 2 weeks until the inauguration, if an inauguration occurs? You know, so
Yep.
we're all sitting here thinking, okay, and we go through the same list that you just listed. I'm waiting till this and this and this and this. And we keep waiting. And I think actually, I want the American public to hear this one. I think you are darn tootin' good sports
Mhm.
because everybody's sitting and waiting. Here's the problem: the level of frustration has mounted, and
Yep.
people are out there getting really crabby with one another.
Yep. Well, and you
Wow.
know, when I look at entrepreneurs and small business people, first of all, I think they're being decimated right now, and I think that's by design, unfortunately. Um, when you look at somebody who has an entrepreneurial sense to them, they understand critical thinking, they believe on themselves first, they're okay with self-government and doing things on their own.
Right.
I have a tendency to go out and do it myself. if when somebody gets in my way, just say, get out of my way and let me do it. Even getting my location approved by the local municipality, you had to go through and get windows fixed, and you got to get wiring up to date and all these different things. And I can get it done tomorrow if I'm the one that's responsible for doing it.
Right.
But again, it's arbitrary deadlines. What's going on in our culture right now is we're all being required to wait for something that, and not necessarily something that you believe that you need to be waiting for.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's different levels of fear and anxiety, and there's just lots of really weird extenuating circumstances going on. And so what I think the entrepreneurial energy, the capitalistic, freedom loving energy that America encompasses is being suppressed right now. And so that's what I'm feeling.
Well,
And as positive and as warm as I want to be about the country that we live in and the capacity and potential for everything that we can do, it feels a little different these days. It feels a little, I'm a freedom loving American, a freedom loving business owner, and I don't like being told what to do and not relying on my own critical thinking skills to make decisions. And so that's kind of what I think I'm feeling right now is, get out of my way. Government, get out of my way. That was our rallying cry revolution that we began this whole thing with.
right.
And let us ignite the American people and do what we need to do in order to make this country great and make our businesses great. So,
I think that's very well spoken, and I'm in complete alignment with that. When I hear people calling people sheeple
mhm,
and this put down, Americans are stupid, and no, time out. First of all, don't throw that negative energy and that negative verbiage out to anyone,
yeah,
yourself while you're home alone in your house, because then you have a disparaging perspective about your fellow community men.
100%.
And don't put it across the broadcast. Don't put it, you know, just, don't go negative. And I don't buy it. I think that the Americans we're the entrepreneurial nation. We're the ones who want to be out here working. And if you're not doing your own dream in your own business, you're doing your dream in someone else's business.
Right.
I believe that people want to work. I mean, people say, well, I've got too many people on welfare. You know what? We can change that. We can inspire people off of that and into another dream for them. It's a matter of changing perspective, and then everything shifts. The thing that really concerns me, Brian, and it concerns me for the Missouri Venture Forum. It concerns me for the St. Louis Business Club. And what I opened up this, show talking about is your vision for the
Yeah.
St. Louis Business Club. My concern is that this is classic manipulative psychology tactics, which I'm a doctor of that. I know it. And the American public has been put into a hypnotic trance.
Mhm.
You take the message, it's short and brief, and you hammer it in and you hammer it in. It's just like a jackhammer on the street. You
Yeah.
can't ignore it after a while, but you almost don't even hear it.
So here's what I know. And I think entrepreneurs, critical thinking people utilize their knowledge and expertise and what they've learned from their book smarts alongside what they learn through experience and street smarts and their interactions and experience, over time.
Right.
Running the, previous company that I had, which was all built around diversity and inclusion, not in this BS corporate level of, we're going to put it on the website and make sure everybody thinks that we're into this. It was from the human centered, this is what I believe in, diversity and inclusion model. I put people in rooms together and made them start talking. I made them start working on one another's problems together and businesses together. And the walls started to come down. The veils started to become unmasked. And you didn't care whether somebody was female or male or old or young or black or white. It did not matter, because we were all coming together in kindness to help one another on a human level. And that's what the spirit of it all was. We didn't have the media telling us, things. We didn't have older people or parents or whomever giving us indoctrinized messages. We just came together in a spirit of coming together, community. And I saw this play out for years, and it created the relationships that I think are as wholesome as can be made. What is happening now is I'm being denied the opportunity to amass people together in as safe of an environment as you want to be. I mean, all I was known for was creating a space where folks could be vulnerable and be safe. That's what I want to develop for folks. But people don't even want to come out of their homes. They don't want to walk into a safe office environment. They don't want to, it's just a very unsettling situation that if I believed it, and I think that's what happened when we look at the kindness and the willingness of Americans to help their fellow man, when this situation was presented to us, we all thought it was very alarming. What they initially talked about was very alarming, and everybody took pause and said, how can I help? How can I serve? Ask what you can do for your country, right? And we all did that. And now we're getting more and more information, and this theme and this pattern continues to come up. Scare the bejesus out of everybody, tell them that the world's going to end, and then, oh, it's not that bad. And then you find yourself in these extremely strange behaviors that don't make any sense based on what now we know. And we're all still doing it. And so it's funny, I've often feared the opportunity to figure out what you're made of. But I think given enough push, you are almost compelled to figure out what you're made of. And I think the American people are being pushed. And I don't want another revolution, but if that's what it comes to, I think that's built in our spirit.
I kind of think so too. As a matter of fact, social media and texting and being able to email with people is really handy. Zooming is great, the phone is great, but the rapid fire of words across platforms is really interesting, because we can in a second send each other news clips, videos. You and I have done it. I mean, we're doing it with people to say, look, and then I'm usually following it up with, what do you think? What do you think we ought to do? And I'm sitting waiting with bated breath, and there are things that are terrifying that are happening that are, here's what I do. This is how, here's one of my mind tricks. So I've been playing mind tricks all year. It's my profession, play with your brain and take it to a groovy place. And if something's horrible, turn it into something good. So, what did 2021 mean? Well, for all of America, we learned that foaming soap is really good. You can wash your hands and it gets everywhere. Get them really nice and clean. Every time you go potty, wash your hands. When you come in and out of the house, wash your hands. Okay, great. And then beyond that, you learn your tolerances and your capacities and your abilities, and how to kind of maneuver through what it is you need to do, and how to gauge. Like, I know that I love being around people, but when am I going to go to the grocery? One moment before it opens.
Yeah.
Because I want my freedom as I'm walking through there, and I don't want to be harangued about one thing or another. The other part of it is taking that news and finding a way to spin it. So I believe in the way that we live in the contrast. Like if we're living in the contrast of where we really want to be, it's a perfect opportunity to operate from introspection in a process of discernment, and take that walk of, how do I get from where I don't want to be, but I am right now, into where I want to be? What are the steps that I need to take to be there? So I'm thinking, okay, this is really healthy. But there was something that I heard yesterday. Who knows if it's true or not? But when Nancy Pelosi was reelected as Speaker of the House, there was a news flash that came out that waiting for her at her home was really vile.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
An animal had been slaughtered, and with its blood, there had been a command written on her garage door: we want everything. Now
Yeah.
we will have everything. And I thought to myself, what's the upside of this? In the midst of this being horrible, what's the upside of this? I think the upside of this is it's an opportunity for an awakening. I really hope that she goes home and says, uh-oh, wrong tribe, wrong side. I think that my fellow Americans, maybe I could dial in a different way. Hey, welcome back is what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Come on back, you know?
It's interesting to me because I'm challenged often why I choose to work with who I work with,
Yeah.
which is more individuals, small business owners, people at the beginning of their business ventures or less complex. And I've been having this conversation a lot lately because there's lots of opportunity to be a consultant or an employee of a larger institution to go in and use my education and experience towards those things. But I don't want to. I believe that small business is the backbone of this country and they need more help than just about anybody right now. When you look at what's going on with our hospitality industry, with the restaurants, it's terrible what's going on. And you know, being able to go to big box stores that are more easily tracked and manipulated by large government. I often say that I have an aversion to large government, large religion, large education, large anything. I think when large groups of people get together, it's more difficult to evolve and to progress. I think the great thing about our country is that it's a lot of individuals pooled together that believe in the same ideals and maybe the core values, but for the most part, we believe that freedom is at the core of a lot of that. And I think small business owners still have a lot of freedom in how they want to live their lives. I teased a couple weeks ago that entrepreneurs are the only people that'll work 80 hours a week in order to not work 40 hours a week. I think at the core of that is the opportunity to choose your own path.
Right.
And that's what I want to emphasize for people across the country is that if you want to choose your own path, be careful what you wish for on either side, because what I see is that when the person I prefer is in office, I like what they do. They have good control over my life.
Yeah.
When the person I don't like what they do. They have bad control over my life. And what I'm saying is I don't want either one of them to have control over my life. I want to eliminate both options. So you may agree politically or philosophically with one side or the other, but for me, I don't believe with either side because they both want more control over my life. And I think it is inherent on small business owners to say enough is enough. We know how to run our own lives. We don't need any more guidelines and regulations and people getting in the way. And I often point out that all government is a group of people and systems. That's all our government is. So if you want to hand your power over to the government, you're just handing your power over to a larger group of people. Do you want more control over your life, or do you want other people to have control over your life? And I think small business owners, by and large, want more control over their situation, which is why they went into business in the first place. And so I think it is inherent in business owners and small business owners particularly to band together and not create a large organization, but to live by a spirit of freedom and choosing your own path and making sure that we incentivize both sides to do that for us and to stop taking our power away.
Well, so let's take a look at the people who have said, you can't do this to me. Mm-hmm. They've gotten shut down, boarded up, arrested, hauled off to jail, and he had to hire attorneys to get them out, to argue the point. They still keep coming out. They still keep getting harassed. It puts everybody in a bad position. People have gotten beaten up, by people who want them to be obedient. The police aren't beating them up. I mean, there's people out there who want They want to be the bosses, and so they're thugs, and they're going to come and they're going to beat you up for doing what you do. Or you show up to Washington D.C., the capital of the United States of America, to show up for the president, and afterwards you get beat up. I mean, I think about doing all the things that you're suggesting, and then I don't want to say I'm a coward, because I'm not a coward, but I'm very strategic about where it is I'm going to exercise my voice, because I don't want to go out and be frightened. I do not want to go out and have anybody hurt me, beat me up, shove me, yell at me, or kill me.
Yeah.
And it's no longer, a lighthearted comedic statement that I make. And I think to myself, on in a couple of the private groups, I belong to online, people are in there, and on, just on public social media, people are saying, what are we going to do? We can't stand for this anymore. So I went into a long pitch, like at 3:00 in the morning, saying, okay, you're asking what to do. You're saying we have to stand up and stop this, but nobody's doing really anything. We are watching, hoping somebody does something, the president, the government, the right part of the government, something. But guess what? For Georgia, are we all going to go to Georgia? Are we all going to go to Georgia and say, we'll watch, we'll stand guard, we'll fight against any corruption? No, but we'll wait for the news that we hate, the media outlets that are going to share information with us. Are we going to go to Washington, D.C. and express to Congress what we think, what we want? No, they either won't let us in, or we'll be outside. They'll tell us that we're trespassing on our ground.
Yeah.
And they're in there representing us. And I'm thinking, but you haven't heard from me.
Yep.
How do you know what we want? Like, I didn't want the governors to say to everybody, you go home, you put on a mask, you stay indoors, you don't come out, but I'm going out. I didn't want that. So what is it that we do? Because I think that the worst thing in the world is when, as human beings in our personal life, we're over on the side wringing our hands saying, I don't want this, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What do we tell people about what to do? I mean, what do we tell people at the St. Louis Business Club about what to do? I tell people at Missouri Venture Forum, live your life. Our events will be virtual. I said it early in March of 2020 for the rest of 2020 and through 2021 until I, come out with a different announcement, because I want there to be enough time for reality to set in and for real capability of people to come out and reasonably. But what do we tell people about the St. Louis Business Club? I mean, what are we willing to actualize?
Philosophically, I think we need to educate and empower individuals. I was talking with a couple of friends of mine, but one in particular, Jermaine Andre, who is who I've trained with. He's a MMA Hall of Famer. He's a very accomplished athlete as a mixed martial artist. I'm sorry?
What's MMA?
Mixed martial arts.
Okay.
And so Jermaine and another friend of mine, Robert, and I were talking, and Robert had chosen to be a pacifist, had a very difficult upbringing, had some violence in his past, and chose to be a pacifist. And we were talking about other folks who had chosen to be pacifists. And Jermaine said, there's no such thing as a pacifist that doesn't know how to fight. Because if you don't know how to fight, you're not choosing to be a pacifist. So for Jermaine, choosing to be a pacifist is a very conscious decision, because he is a trained killer. He's one of the most lethal men on the planet if he chooses to be, but he chooses not to be. And this kind of harkens back to the philosophies behind the Second Amendment. I don't know of anybody personally that wants to murder someone. I don't know of anybody that wants to use physical or gun violence against someone. I don't know those people. But I do know people who want the option. when you have overreach of other human beings, which again, our government is just over other human beings. And so when you look at this capability to defend yourself or empower yourself to choose your own path, that's where I think the philosophies of the Second Amendment come. And that's where I think the Constitution gets involved with protecting individual rights. And so I think at the core, Americans need to be educated about what their Constitution means, what their individual rights are. And beyond that, we need to start talking to one another so that we know in this circumstance, our individual rights were trampled upon. And I believe there are a lot more people that believe in the Constitution and individual rights than there aren't. And at some point, the people who believe that need to stop complying with the people who don't believe that. And I don't know the exact tactics that we need, but for one, we can turn off the mainstream media and stop paying attention to them. And then you think, well, where are you going to get your news? Well, it's, for me, it's pretty awful news anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. We can stop telling rumors and gossip through social media. We can stop, allowing someone to dictate what we do in our personal or professional lives. There's non-compliance options that are more pacifist based when you look at Martin Luther King and Gandhi and the way that they employed and did it very, very well. I think those are options until you get to the point where you have to use what is at your disposal. And so if someone is going to come at me and my family and tell us what to do and how to live our lives, I may have to defend that. And the only way to defend that is to become empowered, meaning you have to learn how to fight and know that when the fight comes to you, you have a choice to make.
Yeah.
And so I think I have heard I don't know if it's a rumor, if it's true, but I have always heard that Japan decided not to invade America because we only had, 1% in our military, but 90% owned guns. And they thought, well, if this American public decides, I don't think we're going to put up with you coming into our country and threatening us. We're all armed and we'll all take to the streets in a militia if we need to. I think that is at the core of fighting back. And I don't believe, I'm not a, quote unquote gun nut by any means, but I do own a gun and I do believe in the Second Amendment philosophy to the core because I believe in individual rights. And so I think that is where we need to begin is how do we pool people together, understand that more people believe in freedom and real freedom, not my version of freedom or your version of freedom or the right's version of freedom or the left's version of freedom, but freedom. And to me, I would love to see a third party come to power because I think the Republicans and the Democrats are both terrible. It's just one, depending on which side you're on, you agree with at one time or the other. And so I think the worst thing going on right now is both parties are taking more and more rights away from individuals. And so my choice is to fight through small businesses, which I'm also being denied because I can't pool small businesses together. But ultimately, it's going to be inspiring individuals to fight back against a system that is not working for us, in my opinion.
So I think that we could pool small businesses together. We just have to do it virtually.
Yes, I agree.
And so it's not in our ideal comfort zone. The other part of this is I'm thinking while you're talking, and I'm thinking about the ways in which in school, when I went to grade school and high school and college, you learned about the Bill of Rights. You learned about the Declaration of Independence. You learned about the U.S. Constitution and U.S. history. And it's really sad that so many things have been banished.
Mm-hmm.
When I started hearing 20 years ago about books being banished, I thought to myself, we need to nip this in the bud. And I went to my public libraries and said, I object to you banishing any books.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that.
Yeah. In that same vein, that is why I'm a board member and an enormous supporter of Classical Academy de Lafayette here in St. Louis area. They teach source documents. They teach the United States Constitution, and they have a classically based educational system. It's what the founders studied. And
Yes.
they teach people, regardless of where you come from, how to think, not what to think. And
Yeah.
it's not about indoctrination. It's about looking at things through your own lens and understanding it and being able to argue your own points, not just following along. And so that right now, has 50 students inside of it, but unfortunately, the high school and the schools down the street have 5,000 inside. And so, what we need to do as freedom-loving Americans is look at the institutions and look at the places that are reinforcing what we believe in and making sure that we pour into those things and support those things. Otherwise, these other factions are continually using, in many cases, our own money, our own dollars to support their philosophies and their, you know,
When
ways.
you go back to the school setting
Mhm.
and you talk about that, you talk about big business, big schools are the worst thing in the world.
They're not good.
No, anonymity is our enemy.
Yeah.
And everybody in the neighborhood needs to know one another. Everybody in the schoolhouse needs to know one another. Everybody in the town hall and city hall and village hall, everybody needs to know one another in a community and in all the pockets of the community. So when we're talking about bearing arms and being ready to do that, I certainly uphold the Second Amendment. I've always owned weaponry and learned how to use it and
Mhm.
learned how to use it really well so that I can be appropriate and get my mind into that place where I know, God help me, if it's my life or your life and you're coming after me and you intend the ultimate harm in my direction, I would like to preserve my life however it is that I need to.
And that's getting back to what Jermaine's philosophy is. He gets his students to the point where they can walk down the street, and if somebody's bumping in the night, they go, I kind of wish they would come at me. Let's see what happens. And they've got such an empowering posture to how they are that there's no fear. And you can walk down the street and know I can defend myself if I need to, but I choose not to. So that's what I mean when it comes to educating yourself and empowering yourself with knowledge, with physical fitness. Those are the things that I subscribe to. And that's what the small business or the St. Louis Business Club is all about. It's about coming into a community, educating yourself as best that you can so you know how to do better. Practice hard so that when you're confronted in reality, it's not as difficult. It's just going through the motions.
So I wonder if they're really thinking I could defend myself, but I choose not to. They're not being offensive, but they're ready to be defensive if they have to be. They're,
Yes.
yeah. Um, I don't, I think I know Jermaine. I think I've been around him. I don't know that I actually agree that you have to know how to fight in order to be a pacifist. Does that mean that Gandhi wasn't really a pacifist? Because I don't think he knew how to fight at all.
I think Jermaine's philosophy is that you're not, you don't have a true choice. That I think he appreciates someone who can employ physical violence, not employing physical violence.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then you're not necessarily making a choice. Yes, you're a pacifist in the definition that you don't employ violence, but you don't really have that as a choice because you can't employ violence. And so he's more just making a distinction that if you have trained yourself to be a violent person and can be a violent person and choose to be a pacifist, then all of a sudden you are a true pacifist because you are making that choice.
Hmm. Well, I'll tell you what, if we have a revolution that needs to be fought here, I hope everybody changes their mind. Here's what I think is really frightening, though. I'm not so sure that we would know who to fight against. That's the creepy part. Because, you and I are sitting here earlier in this episode talking about friends and people that we know
Hmm.
you have to be really tiptoeing about. And if I have people who I love who are coming after me because I won't do the things that they think need to be done either for this virus or for our country, wow. Wow, that's going to be horrifying because I don't know what my capacity is in that regard. I really don't.
Well, I mean, the closest thing we can attribute to that is our own Civil War. I mean, you had brothers fighting brothers on what they believed in, and so we do have a past precedent in order to look at. Um, you know,
You know,
it can happen.
I remember as a child saying to my mom and dad, I don't understand war because my parents had both been in World War II and my grandfather had been in World War One. So I heard about all these different things. And I would say to them, so why don't they just put the leaders together and make them fight one another? Why does it have to involve all the people on the ground who didn't have really anything to say about the fight that they're having?
Because
If
that's how leaders fight each other.
Yeah, right. There's an insanity here. And I would always ask my parents, why aren't they just kind?
Mhm.
Well, because they want control. Well, they have to sit in the room with one another until they dialogue it out and they realize that doesn't work. The one person, I don't claim to know everything about everything, but the one person I can say that I really admired was Golda Meir. When there was no peace in the Middle East, when she was running Israel, and she said, enough is enough. We're going to have peace talks and we're going to have them at my house.
Mm.
And that because there was all this arguing.
Yeah.
Come to peace talks. What's the shape of the table? Who
Yeah.
gets to sit at the head of the table? You've got to be kidding me. If you can't exert your authority from any position around the table, then you're not a leader.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Do you know this story? She had the world leaders, these men, to her home, and she said, I'm making chicken soup. We're going to sit at my round kitchen table.
Right.
And, they had a breakthrough. I don't know a better way for people to come together than to do it like that. When you've got this long stretch of space and you have to have 100 people there or 50 people there, you're not going to have a breakthrough and you're going to have people whispering in your ears. You know what? Cut it out and think about, and here's a unique thought for our government leaders. I think that you're supposed to be working for us, not on us, and not against us. So,
Yeah. I mean, for me, I believe that our government has been centralized to Washington, D.C. It's why Washington, D.C. has more millionaires per capita and is probably one of the, highest priced areas to move into. It's because it's been centralized for decision making and centralized for the money flow. I would like to see a much more decentralized situation where we're worrying about our neighbor next door to us, not our neighbor in New York or LA. I mean, it's not that I don't care about other people, but I don't really care more about New York and LA than I do St. Louis. I want to see what's going on in St. Louis much more than I do with New York or LA. And I think the fact that all of this centralized power and decision making has been made in one area, if you're a congressman from Wisconsin, do you really care what's going on in New York or LA, especially when you're not even in Wisconsin? All you kind of care about is what's going on in DC. And I think it's a lot of self-dealing. It's a lot of figuring out how that group of people, a very elitist group of people, and once they get into the crowd, they want to stay in the crowd. They're very self-dealing, in my opinion. And I think until we all band together as a people and say we don't want centralized control coming out of DC, we want our own control locally and personally, then it's going to continue to consolidate.
I have another idea.
Like ideas.
Oh, I know. Here's the solution. So I want to see, all the states united as the United States of America. So we're really united. And in Washington, D.C., we do have Congress, but there's no aisle. Like the Democrats and the Republicans don't sit on opposite sides, so there's no more aisle. They tone the whole damn thing down a little bit, okay? And they're not allowed to wear suits and ties. They gotta just come in casual and really represent the people as opposed to their outfits. And they're only allowed to be there once a month and they cannot live there. So you're not allowed to have a residence in Washington, D.C. No, you have to give the hotel industry the business. And the restaurants, the business. Okay, that's a game changer right away. And you have to go home and be at peace with the people who are your constituents. You have to know how they're all doing. Like you said, they're not at home. So how do they know? Okay, so there's that. So we get everybody home. But when they do come to Washington, D.C., their job is to say, okay, you know what? We're all going to do the election process one way. We're all going to have the governors being obedient to federal law. And from there, the states can figure it out and the cities can figure it out. So, excuse me, you're not allowed to let the citizens rip anything up. That's a federal law. And, the feds will come in and make the correction if you don't. But when we go back home, the governors are in charge of governing the people in our state and making sure that they feel represented and they're heard and they know what's going on. And if there's rumblings, they're getting it because the mayors are filling them in and the people are filling them in. So we've got unification on what the vibe is and what's going on. And we use our technology so that people can stay in touch with each other. But there is no more Washington, D.C. club.
That to me is the solution. When you have the Washington, D.C. club, it is not Republicans versus Democrats. That is an absolute illusion. It is them versus us.
Yeah.
And if you look at whatever decisions are made, if you look at the way money flows, it's how can they get more money flowing through their hands, DC's hands, and not staying with the locality, whether it's you individually and your own tax dollars or effort that you put out there, or your municipality or city or town or your state. And to me, that's the biggest detriment to what's going on in our society right now. And I'm very hopeful that it wakes people up. My fear is that it's going the other direction and people are not empowered individually. They are not educated individually. They do not feel that their government should be afraid of their power. And they're asking for more guidance. And maybe that is the sheep mentality.
I don't think so, because I think that lamb are delicious and sheep give us great wool. But I do not believe that the American people are sheep. I think the American people are beautiful human beings who have been intimidated and hypnotized, and it's sinful. And we have to undo that with an awakening. Well, we've got 1 minute left. So in that minute, I'm going to say, Brian, we need to work the St. Louis Business Club so it's vibrant and healthy, virtually and then live, and bring small business owners and entrepreneurs to your source and let them contribute to getting great.
That's what we want.
All right. On that note, this is a peace out from your host and co-host, Dr. Deb Carlin and Brian Lunt. Brian, thank you for this morning. This was lovely.
Thank you.
A little animated. All right. I'm going to end the episode.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.
Oh,
Goodbye.
goodbye.